Texas Lutheran University.
Today we have Dr. Krolick here from the University of Texas Health Science Center in San Antonio, and he's going to tell us about the programs there in microbiology and immunology. So let's welcome Dr. Krolick.
Yay! So I really am excited to be here today. I don't know if you know it or not, but Dr. Jonas spent some time over at the Health Science Center a few years ago, and I know him better than he wishes I knew him. So if you want to get together in a corner sometime and really talk about some stuff that would be helpful for you in your classes, I think I can do that for you.
We got stories.
We got stories. Do we have stories? Anyway, what I would like to do today is probably a little different than what you're used to. This is not going to be a science seminar. We're really excited about some new programs that we've developed in the last few years over at the Health Science Center. And as most of you are trying to figure out what you're trying to figure out for the future and all of that, I just wanted to make sure that you're aware of the fact that just right down the freeway, a few miles, is some pretty good stuff going on there. So that's what I'm going to be doing, and I don't know if this is going to work or not. It's trying to load up, but we'll see.
Oh, it did.
It did it. That's great, because I hate standing in front of podiums and stuff. I love coming over and making sure that people over on this side of the room don't fall asleep and stuff like that. Anyway, I bring greetings from my department, Dr. Jonas's old department, the Department of Microbiology and Immunology over at the Health Science Center. So my guess is at this point you're trying to figure out what to do with all of this great education that you're getting at TLU, and one possible path that you could take is in the direction of a career in research. There are a lot of different ways of doing it, a lot of different reasons for doing it. And so it might be spinning through your brain right now that those are the sorts of things that you need to be thinking about, and it's going to be all part of the big equation of your life at one point or another. What is the distribution in here in terms of like sophomores, juniors, seniors? How many seniors are in here? A lot of seniors. So you're really getting your act together, I'm sure, ready to go, right? And juniors? Okay. And then are there any sophomores or freshmen in here? Okay, great. Oh, great. So we have a really broad mix. So you have some things to think about up there at the top, but you don't have to figure it all out today because you got a couple of years to go. You guys, you better figure it out right away. So research career, that's one possibility. And so when I was at your point in my training, at your point in your lives, I started thinking about these things, and so I figure maybe you're thinking about them too. And so I'm going to tell you a little story about how I came to believe that that kind of a career would be good for me. And then we'll talk a little bit about the programs that we have that would deliver something like that to you. So I titled this part of this discussion, My Journey into Science. It sounds like some really long-winded novel, but it's not going to be too bad, I don't think. It starts with this red star here. That's sitting on top of Chicago, Illinois. That's where I was born. That's where I grew up. And that's where I started developing my interests in science. So as far back as I can remember, maybe even earlier than that, 4 or 5 years old, I started thinking about things. How does the body work, and why does disease happen, and all of that sort of stuff. And I was really curious about it, and of course I talked to my family all the time about it, and my parents never went to college. They had high school educations, but didn't really know what all the options were, except that maybe I could be a doctor someday, and so they got pretty excited about that possibility. But the fact was, I knew that it was going to have something to do with biomedical science. I didn't know exactly what, but I thought maybe it would be in medicine. So I remember back during those days, I was the main attraction at a lot of our large family dinners because I had memorized the names of all the bones in the body. I thought every doctor needed to know that, so I should get started. And so 5 years old, they would stand me up in front of 30 people having dinner and make me recite the names of the bones in the body. I couldn't do it today. There's 206 of them, though. So that's pretty cool for a 5-year-old, I think. Anyway, everybody knew I was going to be the famous doctor in the family. didn't quite turn out the way they thought. So I was going to go to medical school and do all of the right things, and my parents were very, very excited, and they were, like, you know how parents get sometimes. They were jumping for joy. My son, the doctor. So there I was in Chicago growing up, and I'm not going to take you through every single, bit of anguish I went through in high school, but fast forwarding to college, I went to the University of Illinois in Champaign-Urbana, which is just down in midway through Illinois or so, a couple hundred miles south of Chicago, just far enough away that there were no surprise visits from the family, but close enough that I could run home and get a good meal if I needed one. Anyway, there I was, Champaign-Urbana. The Department of Microbiology at that time was, and still is, I think, one of the most nationally prominent microbiology programs in the country. I didn't know it at the time, but I got a really great education there. In any event, I studied microbiology, and several years into it, I started getting this feeling that maybe being a physician wasn't exactly what I wanted, because I started taking those upper division courses, where things are a little more research oriented, and they started telling me where the information came from, not just here's a list of stuff, memorize it, blurt it back, on a test or something. I actually got to talking about how it happened, how it works, why it works the way it works. And so I talked to everybody I could talk to about what kind of career, what kind of further education I would need to be able to do that for a living. And so I discovered that getting a PhD might be the way to go. I didn't know what a PhD was. I mean, I knew what an MD was. Everybody knew what an MD was. But a PhD, it was, yeah, sure, some of my professors had it. And, my parents, when they thought about professors in academia, all they thought of was these crazy guys with hair shooting out and, patches on their elbows and rips in their pants and stuff, so that, crazy professor types. You know what I'm saying. So they didn't know from PhD, but I heard that that was a way to go, and that maybe I didn't need to have an MD even to do biomedical research in humans, because there's lots of MDs around. All you need is somebody to work with you, get the patient materials or whatever you need, and a PhD whose primary training is in problem solving, figuring out what the problem is, designing experiments and strategies for solving that problem. That's what I wanted to do. And then if I could work together with a physician or some clinical person that could provide me with the patients and the patient materials to do the studies I wanted to do, that would be it. That would be exactly what I was looking for. But this all really confused my parents. My son, the doctor. What happened to my son, the doctor? They were extremely nervous? I don't know. They didn't know what I wanted to do. They thought they understood what I wanted to do. Now they didn't anymore. So I went back every spring break after that, even into graduate school, trying each time to explain to them why I wanted to do this crazy thing rather than be a doctor, the honorable profession. So I tried to explain by two main strategies. One was I explained to them, I wanted the excitement of building new bridges between basic and clinical sciences. So it wasn't so much I wanted to cure patients anymore. What I wanted to do was figure out how physicians could cure patients, what the medicines were, what the strategies were, what the tissue manipulations were, what the management of patients needed to be in order to get those patients well. I wanted to figure those things out. I didn't want to actually do it myself. So I wanted to build those bridges. So that kind of made sense to them. All right, you want to teach the doctors how to be doctors. That's the way they always explained it back to me. At least that's the way my grandmother did. To this day, of course she's long gone, but to this day she would still think I went to medical school. She didn't understand anything else. Anyway, the second thing that I stressed to them was that I wanted the excitement of making discoveries of new information previously unknown to anyone. Think about that. That is a mind-boggling thought, that you could discover something of importance that no one else in the world knows. Nobody. You're basically creating new knowledge. The stuff that goes into the textbooks that you're carrying around with you all the time. To discover something that no one else, to go to sleep that night and say to yourself, man, I know something nobody else knows. It is one of the most exhilarating feelings I've ever felt. And I knew in advance that that was something that I was going to want out of my career. And so that's why I wanted to go to graduate school. They kind of got that too, you know, they kind of got that too, but it was still a struggle. So there I was in Illinois, I graduated, and was convinced I needed a PhD and needed to find a graduate program. So I looked all around the country and decided that after spending 22 frigid years enduring Chicago winters, and it's even worse in Champaign. In the middle of the state, there's nothing there but a couple of corn plants to prevent the wind from flying right in your face and through your bones. I needed something warmer than that. And so there I went. Southern California sounded pretty good to me. And UCLA had a pretty good microbiology and immunology program as well. So I took the trip to the West Coast and joined their program and did my graduate work there. So off to graduate school. When I got there, even though I had been trained as a classic microbiologist in Illinois, at University of Illinois, when I got there, I ran into a few professors that studied immunology. Immunology was I didn't even know what it was at first, but after taking a couple of classes and then doing my laboratory rotation through a particular lab that was studying immunology, I just fell in love with the field, and I left microbiology behind me. Sorry, Bob. Immunology, to me, was where I was going to find those new discoveries and all of that stuff that I've been talking about. So why did I think immunology was so cool? First of all, immunology is a multidisciplinary field involving many areas of science. Immunology is almost like a science rather than a discipline of science. It spans over almost every single scientific, you know, at least biologically connected science that there is, physiology and neurology and all that stuff. There's always some immunology involved in it somewhere. And more specifically, involves studies in infectious diseases. If you want to understand infectious diseases, you got to understand how the immune system works. If you want to study host defenses against those diseases, against those infections, you have to understand the immune system. Vaccine development, we have a gigantic center right now that's developing over at the Health Science Center designed to study how to make vaccines. And we have a lot of collaborations with some folks over at the Texas Biomedical Research Institute. They're one of the top laboratories in the country that deals with Ebola infections and now Zika and all of that other stuff. A lot of really hardcore virologists over there. So vaccine development, really important to us. There are studies in autoimmune disease, things like multiple sclerosis, rheumatoid arthritis, systemic lupus, erythematosus, and so forth, transplant problems, cancer problems, cell signaling issues, just figuring out how cells work. A lot of the information that we've gotten about how a cell is signaled to do things have come from cells that are part of the immune system. Molecular genetics, and any of these so-called itis diseases, itis, you know, like hepatitis, carditis, pneumonitis, those are all diseases that are caused by some flaw in the immune system. When you get the flu and you feel like crap and you just want to die, it's not because the virus is doing anything to you. It's your own body trying to defend itself against the virus that is so intense. This inflammatory immune response is so intense that it spills over onto your own tissues, damaging your own tissues. Makes you feel bad. The virus is hardly even a part of that. It's the immune response that follows that's really making you feel bad. And then immunology is the perfect bridge between basic and clinical sciences. It gets back to my building bridges thing. Immunology, the study of immunology, is a basic science. And there are a lot of fundamental principles of immune responsiveness and immune system that tells us how some of these other things work. And then there is lots of opportunities in clinical circles to apply those basic principles that we learn over here. So it's a great bridge between basic science and clinical science. That's what one of the things that was on my list of requirements for the sorts of studies that I was going to be interested in. I wanted to do that so-called translational science. Anybody hear that term before? Translational science, bench to bedside, they sometimes call it. Taking the basic principles that are learned in the basic science laboratory and applying it to significant medical problems. Translational science. So there I was in California. I did my stint there, learned a lot of immunology, decided that was the field I wanted to be in. Looked around the country and discovered that, well, there are a lot of good immunologists around, but there were a couple of immunologists in Dallas, Texas, that were just doing phenomenal work and really gave me the impression that they could train me to be what I want, who I wanted to be, what I wanted to be. And so I made the move from Southern California to Texas. It almost killed me. Okay. First of all, I'm a homegrown, Yankee to begin with. Then I was out with the granola population out in Southern California, and then I went to Texas, which is a little more conservative. And so the politics alone almost killed me. The Dallas Cowboys, made me crazy because I was an long-time Bears fan. They've only gone to the Super Bowl like once in the last 55 years. Of course, Cowboys are not doing so much better these days, but I became a very ardent Cowboys fan. I learned how to drink beer. Never hated beer before. But there were so many really good things about Texas that I really enjoyed. I loved the way of life, though. I loved the openness. I loved the feeling of independence. I really fell in love with Texas. And my friends from up north, because all my college friends and everything were still up in Illinois, thought I was nuts. They laughed at me. It's like, Texas, you're going to live in Texas. Well, I figured I could live anywhere for 4 or 5 years. I mean, that's as long as then I was going to take a job back in Southern California. That was the plan. So I did my postdoctoral work there, studied immunology, did a little bit of cancer immunotherapy kind of stuff. It was a very interesting experience. The people there were phenomenal. They trained me so well to do so many different things. And then I had to figure out what I wanted to do. Find a job. My plan had originally been to move back to Southern California. Well, when I was in LA, I had a great time. I mean, I worked really hard, but when I played really hard too, and Los Angeles is a good place to play. And when you're a graduate student, you don't really have any money. It's actually better to live in a place like that because you don't have any money. So you're very imaginative, creative about what you do, and we found really interesting fun things to do. The West Coast is right there. There's forests and mountains and everything. Anyway, when I went back there to interview for a job, I discovered that if I moved back there as a grown-up, I was going to be struggling financially for the rest of my life. People on the faculty lived like 90 minutes away from campus because that's what they had to do to be able to find a house they could afford and stuff like that. So it really put a little damper on my plans. And then I started thinking about Texas, and suddenly one day my boss, a postdoc that worked next door to me, introduced me to my future boss, Joel Baseman. He came in to give a seminar, and he just knocked my socks off. He was so dynamic. He was setting up a brand new department in San Antonio. He wanted me to come down and think about and look at it. And I thought, oh my gosh, San Antonio, Texas, I'm going to be doing my lab work in the Alamo or something, and nobody's going to ever hear from me again. Well, I went down there, and he really did impress me, and the facilities impressed me, and the town impressed me. I'd been there a couple times as a tourist, but I never really looked at it as a place to live, and it really impressed me. There were just so many things about it that were attractive. It wasn't that hard to sell me on the idea of moving there, and that's exactly what I did. So I took a job in San Antonio years ago, and I haven't looked back since. And I've never thought about moving away. I've raised my family here, I've had a productive career, and I will eventually have a productive retirement as well. So I did my postdoc work, moved on to the Health Science Center, and that takes me up to the point where I'd like to describe for you just a little bit about the Health Science Center if you're not familiar with it. First of all, it is a health science center. Well, this is what it's like to be one of those guys behind the bench. And I need some bubbling liquids, though, or something. Anyway, Health Science Center. It's a health science center because it's made up of 5 different schools. School of Medicine, the Graduate School of Biomedical Sciences, Dentistry, Nursing, and the School of Health Professions. They all have their own educational and research missions and so forth, but they're all in one place, so we talk to each other. So we are a health science center. We're not just a medical school. We're not just an undergraduate university. We're not just a dental school. We are a health science center. That was very attractive to me. Plus, I had been at UT Southwestern for my postdoctoral work. It's also a health science center. So I saw what kind of power there was in having all these people sort of located at one place. So I was very excited about that. The main two schools that run my life are the medical school and the graduate school of biomedical sciences. Those are the two that have the most connection with who pays my salary and all that kind of stuff. So I have to pay attention to them. Within the graduate school of biomedical sciences, there are a number of different departments. I'm in the Department of Microbiology and Immunology. Okay? It's an administrative unit that's responsible for everything having to do with anything financial, having to do with me, giving me space, giving me, whatever. Within the department, though, there are two major graduate programs. One of them, and I'm going to talk a little bit about all of these in a couple of minutes, one of them is a Master of Science in Immunology and Infection. It's a brand new program. Well, it's 2 years old now. Very new program. We're really excited about it. The other one, the other program in the graduate school is called the Integrated Biomedical Sciences PhD program, IBMS. Now, this is a program that actually spans through the entire graduate school. But within the IBMS graduate program, there are 7 academic disciplines. You can kind of think of them as departments, but we don't call them that because departments are administrative units. These are academic units. Each one of these disciplines is made up of a group of faculty that all have common research interests. So all of the microbiology and immunology type people are in the discipline that I'm in infection, inflammation, and immunity. We call it III. There are 6 other disciplines as well, one in cancer biology, one in biology of aging. I mean, there's six more of them. I'll never be able to remember them all right now. In any event, each one of those is made up of faculty that have research interests in that particular area. So this is, see how excited I get? This is the discipline that I am in, and in fact, I'm the director of this discipline as well. So I run this discipline. So we have the Master of Science program, and we also have the III PhD program, both programs. All right, in these programs, in both the Masters of Immunology and Infection as well as the III program, we're made up of a whole bunch of different faculty. Like I said, we all have similar interests. Very collaborative, extremely collaborative group. We're always talking to each other, working with each other, and so forth. Doing science in microbiology and immunology. And all of them are nationally, if not internationally, known. Very solid scientists. Here's one particularly handsome little guy, this guy here. But then the one that I really have to keep my eye on is this guy right here, okay? My boss. He's the chair of the microbiology and immunology department. So I had been hired by this guy named Baseman a long time ago. 2 years ago, almost exactly, about 2 years and 1 month ago, this guy was hired to replace a retiring Baseman. Okay? And we were a little nervous about that because we had finally gotten used to Baseman after all those years, and now we had this new guy. But it turned out he was just what we needed because Dr. Baseman, I love him, but he's starting to wind down a little bit. Slow down. He still runs a lab, by the way. He's not the chairman anymore, but he runs a lab. But our department was starting to shrink a little bit. We weren't recruiting new faculty. We weren't real aggressive about getting new students into the program. It was kind of shrinking down. And so this guy promised he was going to fix everything, and we believed him. And so far, so good. Okay? His name is Kasali. So I kind of consider this to be sort of a rebirth of the microbiology and immunology department and of our academic discipline. Paulo Kasali is an internationally known immunologist. I mean, hardcore. This was a bit of a shock to us because Baseman, Joel Baseman, was a hardcore microbiologist with a little bit of interest in some dabblings into immunology. This guy is hardcore immunology with barely any dabblings into anything microbiological. He's a real immunologist. So there was going to be a transition. It was clear that we were going to have to go through. But so far, it's been going great. So the first thing that happened when he got there was he walked the halls of our department, and you remember what it looked like, right? Dr. Jonas. And he just kind of looked around and then looked up and said, "This is ugly." It was too, because it was like 40 years old, and you know, the walls used to be yellow, now they were kind of beige, almost greenish beige. Everything with the chip tiles, it was really nasty. So the very first thing that he did when he got there was he gutted the whole department. And there were major renovations and upgrades that were made in everything. The labs are all very open now. There's windows everywhere. He's really into windows. So you can literally be on one side of the department, and if you position yourself just right, you can see through laboratories, through other laboratories, and then out the other side where there are windows everywhere. There is no privacy. But lots of light, though, and everybody really likes the light, keeps them feeling energized. And then the other thing that happened was that he decided we needed to start hiring new faculty. And so in the last 12, 14 months, we've hired 6 brand new faculty members, a couple of them associate professors, most of them assistant professors. They have just brought so much energy to us and so many new ideas. It's really been an amazing transformation. And now, just this last week, we are beginning to recruit again. So we're going to be bringing in another 2 faculty members. So there'll be at least 8 brand new faculty to kind of help us older guys keep the ball rolling. And then he swears there'll be even more after that, but we'll see. So we got new facilities, we have new faculty, a new chairman. We were set. So we ended up sitting down and deciding what our goals were. We have scientific and we have academic goals. We needed to know what we were all about at this point. If we were reborn, we had to know what we were reborn as. So it turns out, not too surprisingly, that there were 2 main missions that we created for ourselves, very common to most departments, that of being a research mission and the other being an education mission. Okay? Research and education, that's our main job. So let me talk for a couple minutes about the research part of this. First of all, there is the immunology. Many of these new faculty members are immunologists. Now, they may have some microbiological interests, but they are mainly immunologists. So we have a lot of immunology going on in the department, but we also have real microbiologists still in the department as well that study the infectious disease side of things. So not only do we study inflammatory diseases, autoimmune diseases, vaccines, as I said before, tumor immunology, but also we study bacterial infections and fungal infections and viral infections and so forth. So we have those guys, and then it turns out that quite a few of them have interests on both sides. And it occurred to us that it's not studying that's our strength. It's not studying this that's our strength. It's bringing them together in a special way that allows us to see both sides of the same picture. The picture is infectious disease and our ability to defend ourselves against those infectious diseases. Well, being able to understand both sides of this is clearly beneficial. And so we have tons of collaborations that go on in our department right now between people that study the immune side on one hand and the infectious disease side on the other hand, and quite a few that can do both at the same time. And so it really is a microbiology and immunology department. I mean, it's both things going on simultaneously. There are additional research opportunities, however, besides just what we do in our little world. As I said before, this is a health science center, HSC, Health Science Center. We have collaborations with virtually all the schools at the Health Science Center. So we have departments within the graduate school that we collaborate with, other departments. One of the first and most negative things about the Health Science Center that I noticed when I got there was that whoever designed the place ought to be tracked down and shot. Because, anybody been out there trying to get around there? It's like a bunch of boxes that are all shoved together, and every time they added a new wing or a new box onto this structure, nobody ever bothered to renumber it. So you're walking down the D corridor, and then all of a sudden you're in the V corridor. It's like, what? You're in the medical school for 1 second, and then suddenly you're in the dental school. And you can't even tell where the lines are drawn. And it made me nuts. I didn't know where I was. I still get lost sometimes. But you know what happened over the years was that I discovered that it was a very special opportunity to interact with folks all around campus. Nobody cared if you were in the microbiology department or in the periodontics department or in the medical school or the nursing school or school of health professions, because we were all just kind of clumped together. People talked all the time. It wasn't like we were in different buildings. You had to go across the street to talk to those guys. You had to go across the street to talk to those guys. It was like we were all there. I had a pharmacologist that works next door to me on my right, and I have a bunch of biochemists that are down the hall on my left. And if I go forward, there's a department of cellular and structural biology, genetics, and that kind of stuff. Right down the hall, I got a bunch of them. So all I have to do is walk out into the hallway, and I can talk about just about anything I want. And so it turns out that this really poorly designed building really just benefited the faculty. Now, don't get me wrong, the chairs of the departments know exactly where the lines are. You know, and if you ask, where's your department, they'll say, here, here, here. They know exactly. But from my perspective, I don't even care where the lines are. Anyway, so we have all this collaborative stuff going on. Then off campus, we have these non-health science center collaborations that go on. We work quite a bit. In fact, we have half a dozen or so adjunct appointed faculty at the Texas Biomedical Research Institute, which has the non-human primate center over there. They also have the so-called BSL-4 facility. This is one of just a small number of laboratories that are set up to be able to study the most dangerous pathogens in the universe. If you've been watching the news at all and listened to all of the Ebola stuff, for instance, they were on the news every other day because they're trying to develop a vaccine for Ebola. Now they're into Zika virus, and they're a bunch of virologists, and they're excellent scientists, and they have this facility that lets them study all this stuff without endangering themselves or anybody else. So it's a very cool place, Texas Biomedical Research Institute. We're also surrounded by 6 or 8 small hospitals, well, some larger than others actually. Those physicians have become our collaborators in a lot of clinical studies. They provide us with patient materials, and so we can do patient studies and so forth. So it's not just faculty in the medical school that we rely on, but also some of the physicians in the hospitals. So they become our buddies. We have faculty that are at UTSA that are adjunct appointed onto our faculty that we interact with. And then we also have, this is Military Town, USA. There are a couple of military laboratories that are world known for the kinds of research that they do. And they also have become our collaborators. We've trained some of their people, and in fact, there are a half a dozen or so now of our graduates, our PhD graduates, that have permanent positions over there as civilian researchers. So it's become a very close relationship. So we have all these other opportunities. We don't even have to stick just with the health science center. So as far as our educational mission goes, we kind of look at this as a pipeline. That's what this is supposed to represent. So it's a pipeline. There are various valves so you can kind of shoot out wherever you need to. And the reason that we view it as a pipeline is that we do train researchers from undergraduate institutions as well as students looking for a master's degree, as well as students looking for a PhD. So at all of these levels. And it's turning out now, and we really didn't realize what was going to happen when we first started setting this up, but quite a few of the undergraduates that we're training have now applied to the master's program. And several of the master's students are now applying to the PhD program. So it's really kind of a pipeline, okay? At least that's what I can think about as I fall asleep each night. So we have the undergraduate research program. I'll mention a few things about that. And we have the master's program that I'll mention in a little more detail in a second as well. And then finally, the PhD program. This is the IBMS graduate program that I was discussing a little bit back, a little bit before. Okay, so let's think about this undergraduate program. So this was something that we never even thought of I mean, I have to give Dr. Krolick, my boss, all the credit for this. There was, I don't know, maybe a number of years ago, we had put together one of these like 6-week summer, internship things for undergraduates, and we invited people from around the city and around the country. In fact, it was a pretty successful program, but it was very limited as far as what the students could accomplish. And he said, no. We need a program where students come here every single week for a year and really do research, publication quality research, really see what science is like. If we're looking to not only teach them some science, which of course is part of it, but also teach them what a career in science would be like, we need to let them really see what it's like. A 6-week experience is not going to do that for you. So we have set up with several schools around the city, Incarnate Word, St. Mary's, Trinity, programs with their administration that sets up an opportunity to get course credit for coming to the Health Science Center and doing research. And there's a big celebration and poster session at the end, and they get a grade for it. And it's really a very structured opportunity to learn what it's like to be in a research life, in a research career. So our objectives in this program were to provide undergraduate students with a meaningful and productive experience in cutting-edge biomedical research laboratories. Meaningful, meaning not just a few weeks, but a whole year where you really get to see the good sides and the bad sides of doing research, and I guarantee you there's both. Designed for science students interested in going to graduate school or medical school, mostly students that really see research in their future. This is not for somebody to just have something to do in their last semester, in college. This is something for somebody that really thinks they want to do this and want to see what it's like before they make any major commitments. So as I said, we've arranged with a variety of schools situation where they can get course credit and so forth, so that students are not only getting the education, the research experience, but they're also getting a grade on their transcript that indicates that they went through this very pretty intense program, which usually is a very beneficial thing to have when you're sending that in for position in graduate school or medical school. Okay. All the research that's done is done under the supervision of our faculty, so we don't just dump you in a lab and say, do the best you can, we'll see you next year. You're able to attend all of the same things that our master's and PhD students can attend, like journal clubs and seminar series and so forth. And we have a lot of nationally and internationally renowned scientists that come through our program all the time giving lectures. We have retreats and we have scientific conferences that sometimes the students can attend. Sometimes the PIs, if things are going really spectacular, might take you to a national meeting to see what it's like to go to a national meeting and see other scientists in action. Lectures by internationally renowned speakers, I already said that. So that's basically it. And you can see how happy they got. It's a good program. Anyway, so this is the contact information for that. Okay, so the master's program. This is maybe the one that I have the most personal connection with, because I wrote the proposal that was sent into the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board that approves all educational programs in Texas, and made the case that we not only needed a master's program like this, but that we were prepared to deliver a good one. And so when that got funded, when that got approved, I felt pretty good, at least for a day. Anyway, the master's program, that's this year's incoming class. So we bring in somewhere between 20 and 25 master's students each year. And I might say also we have about 20 to 25 undergraduates in our program right now, undergraduates. So we have 25 of them, 25 of these guys that come in for a 2-year program. So that means first year, 25 come in. The next year, they're still here because it's a 2-year program. Another 25 come in. So 50 of these guys, 25 undergraduates, and then about 30 PhD students. We have students coming out of our ears, and we're loving it. I mean, the energy level in the last 2 years has been unbelievable. So here's the master's program. It just came online at the end of last year. So I pretty soon I'm going to have to take the newly accredited off of there, but I'm still so proud of it. I leave it on there. It's a 2-year program, Master of Science in Immunology and Infection, basic principles and clinical translations. 2 years, 1 year of coursework, 1 year of research with a written thesis at the end. So this is a thesis-driven program. This is not a non-thesis program. When you get this degree, somebody sees that you got this degree, they know you have research experience. And depending on what it is you want to do, being able to say that you have research experience is a really important thing to be able to say. There are a lot of master's programs where they'll just send you to the library and say, come back with a thesis about something, a report about something. This is not that. This is, you go to the lab, you generate the data, you write up the paper, you generate a thesis, and then at the end you get credit for it. So you get to train with our world-class scientists in our program. Lots of, like I said, a year's worth of classroom activities with a really exciting laboratory experience in the second year. Graduates, our goal for our graduates is to prepare them for a lot of different science-related careers like these. So if you're interested in something that will give you better opportunities at entry-level, mid-level, or leadership positions in research and clinical laboratories, this is the kind of program that will do that for you. Also, I discovered when I was writing this proposal that community colleges, all the science instructors at these community colleges have master's degrees now. If you really want to be attractive, if you have a teaching career in mind and you want to go teach at a community college, you'll need a master's degree to do that. This program is going to give you one that they're going to really respect. We're really excited about that. Positions that require any kind of real-world problem-solving or research skills, so research laboratories at our own institution are hiring master's students to do the technical work in the laboratories, in the basic science and clinical laboratories. Positions that require employees to be prepared to be immediately productive. So if a research lab hires you, they know that you've already just gone through a year of research. You're ready to go. You know what end of a pipette to use, and you know how to measure things and how to solve problems and all of that. So it's a very beneficial kind of position to be in, and it will improve your competitive. Here's another one that we found is that there are a number of students who, they wanted to go to medical school, for instance. They went to college, and first couple of years they had a great time. That was me. But at the end of that 2 years, they had barely, a C+ average, and they weren't going to medical school with that kind of, academic record. So what they can do then is go to a program like this, of GARS, and show that that was just a fluke. That was me being immature, having too good a time. Now this is the real me. Look what I can do. And it can erase all those mistakes. So it's a very cool opportunity to sort of beef up your academic credentials if you want to go to school and you're a little bit on the weak side. Admissions requirements, bachelor's degrees, keep working. Grade point average of a B. And then we also, we do require the GRE exam scores, but we're very flexible about those scores. Letter of recommendation, so you need somebody like Dr. Jonas that we actually know and trust to write you a letter that says, this person is fabulous, you gotta take him or her. So really important choice who writes that letter. Dr. Grove too, I guess. Contact information, same contact information, pretty much. The website is a little bit different because it's master's rather than undergrad. Okay, then finally, the final part of the pipeline is our PhD program. This is the IBMS, Integrated Biomedical Sciences PhD program. The objectives of this program are a little further advanced than the master's program. First of all, it's a 5.5 year program. It's not 2 years. So you're doing research for a long time. It seems even longer. The idea is to provide you with training in areas of microbiology and immunology with emphasis on hypothesis-driven problem-solving research. We want to teach you how to think science, really understand how to identify a problem, and then figure out what strategies you can develop to solve that problem. It's not good enough to just know what it is. You've got to know how to fix it, too. We also want you to learn how to develop, evaluate, and analyze translational experimentation. There's that word again, that buzzword, translational, bench to bedside. Learning how to take basic information that you generate in the laboratory and figure out a way to apply it to real-world biomedical problems, patient problems, and so forth. And as I said, it's about a 5-year program. We have people that have gotten out in 4, people that have gotten out in 6 or even 6.5. The average is right around 5, though, from the day you walk in the door to the day you graduate. And the jobs that are available to PhDs these days are very varied. You can look for jobs in university settings like what I do. It drives you insane, but it's a really exhilarating kind of career. Leadership positions in research and development industries, so a lot of biotech companies are springing up everywhere. In fact, San Antonio was noted as being one of the most growing area in the country as far as biotech. And that whole corridor between San Antonio and Austin is just going to be loaded with a parade of biotech companies over the next few years. So there are lots of jobs that are going to be available there. And then finally in government, we have the military bases that have their research activities going on in the Department of Defense and all of that. We have the CDC, that's government. So there are a lot of opportunities to do things other than going into a university setting, which is, in the old days, that's what we thought we had to do. Once you got your PhD, you go and be a professor in some university. Otherwise, your mentor, your supervising professor, was going to disown you because it was horrible. You're going into industry? It's like that. But it's not like that at all. Biotech industries now have just as sophisticated research activities and goals as any university. So it's really a lot of stuff. Again, bachelor's degree, grade point average of a B, GREs, and letters of recommendation, pretty much. And the application deadline actually is just passed. So the next one is going to be January 2017. Here's the application deadlines for the next master's admissions season. It's April 1 of this year. We are right now beginning to wind up our and get really moving on our admissions season. So the applications are coming in like crazy. And there's even a later one for people that hem and haw and don't know exactly what they want to do and then finally figure it out and still want to do it. So up until June 1st, we'll look at applications. But April 1st is the application deadline for our master's program. So if you have any interest in this whatsoever, you should look into it and see what's going on. Okay, so January of next year, that's the application deadline for the PhD program, and here's the contact information for that too. And this is one of my favorite buildings on campus. This is our library. It's just, my son graduated from UT's architecture school. When he saw this, he was just blown away by it. And so I knew that it wasn't just me that liked the way it looked. And this is in the evening, of course. These are all windows. So if you could really look in those windows, you'd see all the students sitting on these really squishy chairs and sofas and everything looking out the windows when they should be reading. So anyway, that's our library. But under the library is this pipeline. This is supposed to be very clever now. You'll be amazed by me. This is pipeline of undergraduate students and master's students and PhD students flowing in one end and out the other, and often to really great research careers. At least that's what we're hoping to provide our research, our scientific community. So there's our contact information one last time. If you have any questions, let's have them.
Questions?
Yes, ma'am.
Does your program also include like international math pieces?
Mathematics classes. We have statistics, we have bioinformatics, but we don't have basic mathematics. If a student needs math in their background to be able to do what they need to do, we usually send them down the street to UTSA because we have arrangements with them to let them in their classrooms, but we don't really have formal math classes. This is graduate school and above. There's no undergraduate education really available. Yes, sir.
Very nice presentation. What type of stipends do you give for graduate students?
The PhD students get $26,000 a year, plus they get their tuition and fees paid, plus they get their health insurance paid. So it's pretty easy to live off of what we give you. Plus, we all know that the cost of living in San Antonio is pretty decent. So it's probably more than any of you are making right now, right? If you go to other cities, like if you went to the coasts, like San Francisco or Boston or whatever, you know, the stipends are probably double that, but the cost of living is probably 10 times what we have here. So we've been trying to keep it in a good balance, and our students don't complain about it at all. So it seems like a pretty lot of money.
Are there stipends for master's degree students?
There is financial aid packages that we have, but we don't have literally stipends. We're not even allowed to provide stipends for them. So it costs you a little more, unless you can get one of these financial aid things. Yes, sir.
You have a very varied faculty. Can you give some examples of the types of research that students would be involved in master's or PhD work?
Well, first of all, there's no distinction that we make between or among the undergraduate, master's, or PhD students and who they can work for and what kind of research. The only thing we have to keep a little bit of an eye on is if we have an undergraduate that happens to be one of these star students that's under 18. There's nobody in here that's under 18, right? Well, we had one, and we had a little bit of a problem because the kind of research did matter because they were a minor. But for the most part, they all can do all the same things. The kinds of research that we do, well, on the infectious disease side, we have a guy that studies Yersinia pestis, the cause of Asian plague. We also have somebody that studies chlamydia, one of the prominent sexually transmitted diseases, as well as trachomatis, which causes lipoma and stuff like that. They both study not only the infections, but they study the host's ability to resist those infections and how to manipulate host defenses, immune responses, so that the host is better able to reject those infections. We also have some hardcore molecular biologists that study how lymphocytes get activated in an immune response, how antibody is made, not just what it looks like, what its structure is, and that's the bare bones stuff, the basic facts, but we try to understand why in certain immune responses IgM antibody is made, whereas in other immune responses IgA antibody is made, and so forth. I don't know how many of you have taken any immunology, but these are very important questions, and we're trying to sort them out at the genetic level. There's a lot of bioinformatics that go on. People are studying the genome to death right now, and it's going to get even bigger in the next few years, trying to figure out, you know, when somebody gets exposed to an infectious microorganism, what genes in which cells get activated, you know, and is that a good thing or is that a bad thing? And how does it provide us with protection, or maybe even, like I was talking about the flu before, how it may even aggravate an infectious disease scenario. So we have that. We have certain people that are studying autoimmune diseases. There's one guy, in fact my chairman, is interested in systemic lupus erythematosus, lupus. How is it that the body accidentally produces an antibody response, an immune response against itself? It doesn't happen most of the time, right? Because most people are immunologically healthy, but there are instances where individuals will just start doing that, and we don't know why, and he's trying to figure that out. There's also several people that are studying HIV and AIDS, several over at the Texas Biomedical Research Institute, trying to understand what it is that allows the infection to, you know, remain dormant for years and years and years, and how to get rid of it. It's a very tricky virus that learns how to hide inside of cells. It's a retrovirus. And so they're trying to figure out how to bring it out so that they can attack it and get rid of it. So there's a lot of studies on that as well. And bunches of other things. Those are the sorts of things. Yes, ma'am?
Have they ever tried doing multiple sclerosis, or is that not part of your?
Nobody in my department studies multiple sclerosis, but there's a woman over in the neurology department that we sometimes interact with who is very interested in MS. I used to study muscular dystrophy until I retired my lab. But I guess I ran a lab for like 30 years and then just decided I needed to do a little more teaching and administration. I don't know what got into me. I know what got into me. I got tired of writing grants. He was a great student. Oh, thanks, Bob. He was a wonderful student.
Okay, well, let's thank Dr.
Thanks a
Krolick.
lot.
For more information, please visit tlu.edu.